I used a classic cheat to travel the world for free, though at the time I didn't think of it as cheating. I told myself it was cleverness, resourcefulness, maybe even fate opening a side door just for me. The truth, of course, is murkier than that. But back then, with a restless heart and no money in my pockets, I was ready to believe anything that would set me moving. It started small, as these things always do. I was in an airport, ticketless and broke, watching people stream through gates with the kind of ease I envied. I noticed something so simple I almost laughed. A gate agent had left a discarded boarding pass at the counter, forgotten when someone changed flights. It wasn't valid, not really, but when I picked it up, I realized it was good enough to get me past security. I slipped it into my pocket, walked confidently through the checkpoint, and suddenly, the impossible was happening. I was inside the secure area, free to move, free to slip onto flights if I timed it right. That was the first trick, the first cheat. The second was bolder. Boarding passes, I learned, could be reprinted at kiosks if you had just the right information. And information, as I discovered, was everywhere, on discarded stubs and bins, in the hands of travelers too careless to guard their details. I wasn't stealing seats, not at first. I was hitchhiking on no-shows, waiting until the very last moments, sliding into the spaces left behind when someone missed their connection. The system didn't notice. Nobody questioned a tired face boarding with a crowd. With that, my life changed. One week I was in New York, the next in Lisbon, the next in Casablanca. I told myself the world wanted me, that I was only taking what others left behind. The sunsets over the Mediterranean, the dusty bazaars where spices clung to the air, the trains rattling through Eastern Europe. I convinced myself all of it was meant for me. I walked ancient streets in Istanbul, stared up at cathedrals in Prague, drifted through night markets in Bangkok, and all the while, the cheat carried me forward. But the trick had layers, and once you taste the rush of getting away with something, you look for bigger ways to stretch it. Hotels were next. I learned that if you walked in with confidence, claimed a reservation under a common name, and acted like a weary traveler, clerks rarely questioned you. More than once, I stayed in rooms that weren't meant for me, ate breakfasts at buffets without paying, slept between crisp sheets overlooking cities I could never afford. There were moments of fear, of course. The sharp glance of a ticket agent who paused too long over my pass. The time in Rome when I walked into a hotel lobby, only to find the actual guest arriving behind me. The time in Tokyo when I thought for sure I was caught as security swarmed the boarding area, my heart hammering so loud I thought it would give me away. But luck, or something like it, always seemed to carry me through. And yet, the longer it went on, the more I felt the weight of it. There's a loneliness in drifting without anchors, in moving too quickly to form bonds. People asked me what I did, how I afforded it, and I spun stories, writer, photographer, consultant, anything to hide the truth. Their eyes lit with admiration, but I felt the sting of knowing I was building my life on lies. The thrill began to sour, replaced by something hollow. I remember one night in Buenos Aires, standing on a balcony with the city lights burning below, the air filled with music and laughter from streets I barely knew. I realized I didn't belong there. Not really. I was passing through like a shadow, leaving nothing behind, carrying nothing forward. The cheat had given me the world, but it had stolen something too: roots, honesty, the quiet satisfaction of earning what I took. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe the fear that luck would finally run out. Maybe it was the night in Sydney when a gate agent looked at me too long, her eyes narrowing, and I saw, just for a moment, the reflection of what I had become. I walked away from the flight, from the airport, from the cheat itself. Even now, years later, I think about it. I think about the streets I wandered, the seas I crossed, the faces I'll never see again. The world was mine, for free, for a time. But nothing free stays free. I paid in ways harder to measure. I used a classic cheat to travel the world, and though the journey gave me stories to last a lifetime, it also left me with a truth I can't escape. Sometimes the greatest cost is hidden, waiting until the journey ends. I used a classic cheat to travel the world for free, but what I didn't realize at the beginning was that the cheat itself would become a journey. Every airport, every city, Every border I crossed felt like part of a game where the rules didn't apply to me, where I was always slipping in through the cracks. In Paris, for example, I found myself wandering the banks of the Seine on a cold spring night. I hadn't planned to be there. I hadn't planned any of it. But I'd slipped onto a flight out of New York with nothing more than a borrowed boarding pass and the boldness to pretend I belonged. I walked the cobblestone streets, ate a baguette on a bench near Notre Dame, and listened to the sound of languages I barely understood. I had no money for hotels that night, so I sat in the train station until morning, surrounded by travelers who had actually paid their way. My heart pounded when the guards walked by, but they never stopped me. I told myself that Paris had let me in, that the city itself had chosen me. From Paris, I drifted south, slipping into Barcelona. I remember Gaudi's cathedral, Sagrada Familia, its towers clawing at the sky like something unfinished and eternal. I stood there for hours, staring up, the crowds moving around me, and I felt both infinite and invisible. At night, I joined strangers on the beach, laughing with people whose names I never learned, sipping cheap wine someone else had bought. I thought I was living the dream, but I was already learning how fragile it all was. The cheat carried me further east. In Istanbul, I walked the Grand Bazaar, colors and smells so overwhelming they seemed like a dream, spices piled high in shades of gold and red, lamps glittering with tiny shards of glass, voices echoing off stone walls older than my entire country. I had no ticket out of the city, no plan, just the certainty that I would find another way forward. At night, I sat under the shadow of the Blue Mosque, and for the first time I wondered if what I was doing was more than cleverness. Was I stealing not just flights and hotel beds, but moments, memories, experiences that were meant to be earned? But the thrill was still stronger than the guilt. From Istanbul, I moved to Cairo, then onward to Morocco. Marrakesh swallowed me whole. The market was a maze where smoke, music, and voices mixed until I could no longer tell where one ended and another began. Snake charmers swayed with their flutes, children darted through alleys, and the smell of grilled meat rose into the night air. I remember buying a scarf from a vendor, pretending to haggle with money I could barely spare, while knowing that I hadn't paid a cent to reach this place. It felt intoxicating, like the whole world was open if I only had the nerve to keep pushing. Asia was where the cheat reached its sharpest edge. In Bangkok, I stayed at hotels I could never afford, slipping in with confidence, signing my name on sheets no one bothered to verify. I swam in rooftop pools while the city glowed beneath me, neon and chaos stretching forever. But I never relaxed. Every time the elevator door opened, I braced myself for someone to demand proof, to ask who I really was. Nobody did, and the silence of that unasked question was almost worse. In Japan, the game nearly ended. I tried to slip into a flight from Osaka to Tokyo with a pass that wasn't mine. The gate agent stared at the paper too long, her eyes flicking between me and the screen. My chest tightened, sweat prickling at the back of my neck. Then she handed it back with a polite bow, and I walked down the jet bridge, shaking, promising myself it would be the last time. It wasn't. South America pulled me in next. Buenos Aires felt alive in a way few cities ever had. Tango music spilled from open doorways, and I wandered for hours just listening, just watching. I danced once, badly, with a woman whose laughter still echoes in my memory. She asked me what I did for a living, how I afforded so much travel. I lied to her face, told her I was a writer on assignment. She believed me, and that belief cut deeper than any suspicion ever had. The longer I went on, the more I realized I was becoming a ghost. I had no receipts, no proof of where I'd been or why. My memories stacked up, vivid and unreal, but there was nothing to tie them together except the trick that had carried me. I lived in airports and train stations, in borrowed hotel rooms, in the space between legitimacy and exile. In Sydney, it ended. I was about to board another flight when the gate agent looked up and said, "Sir, could you wait a moment?" Her tone was calm, but my entire body froze. I handed over the pass, already feeling the net closing. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. But then she smiled, handed it back, and said, Enjoy your flight. I walked away, boarded the plane, but I knew, absolutely knew, that this was the last one. My luck hadn't run out yet, but it would, and when it did, I wouldn't just lose the cheat. I'd lose everything. I stopped. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The cheat had given me the world, but it had also hollowed me out. I had stood in Paris, Istanbul, Bangkok, Buenos Aires, yet I had nothing to show for it but the knowledge that I'd stolen my own adventure. Still, when I close my eyes, I can smell the spices in Marrakesh, hear the bells of Prague, feel the night air of Tokyo. The world is still inside me, and maybe, in some strange way, that was the price I paid, the knowledge that I had touched it all, but never truly held it. I used a classic cheat to travel the world for free, and the longer I kept doing it, the more the world opened itself to me in ways I had never imagined possible. What started as a single stolen chance, a discarded boarding pass, a slip through security, turned into a way of living, a rhythm of survival. Airports became my second home, departure boards my calendar, and chance my only traveling companion. I remember the first time I landed in Rome. The plane touched down in the early morning, and the city unfolded before me in golden light. I walked through narrow streets where scooters screamed past, and the smell of coffee spilled from every corner cafe. I tossed a coin into the Trevi fountain, though I laughed at myself as I did it, wishing for luck when I had already made my own by bending the rules. I slept that night not in a hotel, but under the open sky near the Colosseum, staring up at the ruins lit in amber. Tourists paid fortunes to see what I saw, and I had slipped in for free, carrying nothing but the thrill of being untethered. From Rome, I wandered to Berlin. The city felt like it was still stitching itself together, scars of its past visible in every block of gray concrete. I joined a walking tour, though I wasn't really part of it, drifting close enough to hear the guide's stories about walls and wars, about division and freedom. At night, I followed the sound of music underground into clubs where dawn seemed like an afterthought. No one asked who I was or how I'd gotten there. Berlin was a place where ghosts could dance freely, and I felt like one of them. Further north, I slipped onto a train bound for Amsterdam. There, the canals reflected the sky like mirrors, and bicycles swarmed around me like a tide. I stayed in a hostel for 2 nights, one of the rare times I actually paid. The bed creaked, the room smelled of damp socks, but I felt something I hadn't in months, the warmth of other travelers sitting at the same table, sharing bread, stories, and laughter. They spoke of money saved, jobs quit, and plans made. I spoke less. My story was one I couldn't tell. Africa pulled me next, and in Morocco, I felt as though I had stepped through time. The Medina in Fez was a labyrinth, narrow alleys twisting until I lost all sense of direction. Donkeys carried goods through streets too tight for cars, and rooftops looked out over an endless maze of earth-colored stone. I ate tagine from a stall, burning my tongue but savoring every bite, and watched the sky melt into indigo above the minarets. That night, I crept into a Riyadh courtyard, hiding until the doors locked, then slept on a couch beneath the stars. The tiles were cool beneath my cheek, the fountain whispering me to sleep. Asia was another world entirely. In Delhi, the air itself felt alive, thick with dust, horns, and humanity. Cows wandered the streets with the same calm authority as policemen, and temples rang with chants that seemed to shake the very air. I joined the chaos of trains so crowded I thought the walls would burst. No ticket, no place, yet always moving forward. I stood in the doorway of one carriage, the wind whipping my face, and for a moment I felt like I was flying across a continent. In Bangkok, I learned the cheat could be stretched further still. I slid into hotels not just to sleep but to live, showers, pools, breakfast buffets where I ate enough for 2 days at once. From the rooftops, the city looked endless, neon tangled with temples, tuk-tuks darting like fireflies far below. But in the middle of all that luxury, I couldn't shake the unease. Every bite tasted faintly of theft, every swim a reminder of how easily I could be caught. Tokyo tested me. The order of the city, the precision of its people, made me feel like an intruder more than anywhere else. I walked the glowing streets of Shibuya, thousands of people flowing around me, and yet I felt completely alone. I ducked into ramen shops, slurping noodles as steam fogged my glasses, pretending I was just another tourist. But I wasn't. I was drifting on borrowed time, and deep down I knew it. South America was where the cheat began to feel heavier. In Rio de Janeiro, I climbed to see Christ the Redeemer, arms outstretched above the city, the ocean shimmering in every direction. The beauty was overwhelming, almost painful, but instead of joy, I felt an ache. I hadn't earned this. I hadn't worked for it. I was standing in the most breathtaking place in the world, but my soul felt like it was only half there. Chile, Argentina, Peru, they passed in a blur. In Cusco, I joined a group heading to Machu Picchu, climbing through clouds toward the ancient stones. I stood at the top, staring down at terraces carved into the mountainside, and I thought of all the people who had walked that path with sweat, labor, and sacrifice. My path had been shortcuts and lies. I told myself it didn't matter, but in that sacred place, it did. By the time I reached Sydney, I was tired, not just in my body, but in my spirit. Airports that once thrilled me now filled me with dread. Every glance from an official felt sharper. Every announcement over the speakers felt like a warning. The cheat had given me the world, but it had also carved a hollow in me. I boarded my last flight with the same fake smile, the same calm steps, but inside I was already saying goodbye. I had outrun the system, outsmarted the gates, but I could no longer outrun myself. Years later, I still carry the memories. The laughter in Barcelona, the call to prayer in Istanbul, the lanterns in Tokyo, the samba in Rio, they live inside me like treasures I never deserved. I used a classic cheat to travel the world for free, and though it gave me everything I thought I wanted, it also showed me the price of taking without giving. The world lets you pass through but never lets you belong.